I'm calling to order this meeting. This is an additional meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Tuesday, July 9th, 2024. The time is 1:17 in the afternoon, and we are meeting in the council chambers, room 500 of the Johnny Wilson Building. This is an additional meeting, meaning not a regularly scheduled meeting of the Committee of the Whole. This meeting will be followed by an additional legislative meeting, meaning also not a regularly scheduled meeting, legislative meeting of the council. And let's see, we have a number of measures for markup in the Committee of the Whole, and then a number of measures that were marked up in other committees that will pass through the Committee of the Whole to today's legislative meeting agenda. This meeting is being broadcast live on the council's website and on cable television channel 13. Council's website is www.dccouncil.gov. We begin our Committee of the Whole meetings determining whether we have a quorum. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Chairman Mendelson.
Present.
Councilmember Allen. Here. Councilmember Bonds.
Here.
Councilmember Fruman.
Present.
Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Gray, Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George.
Here.
Councilmember McDuffie.
Here.
Councilmember Nadeau. Councilmember Nadeau, Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Parker, Councilmember Pinto.
Present.
Councilmember Robert White.
Present.
Councilmember Trayon White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. The first measure for markup in the Committee of the Whole is PR 25-790 entitled the District of Columbia State Athletics Commission Barbara Barnes Confirmation Resolution of 2024. This resolution would confirm the mayor's nomination of Barbara Barnes for appointment as a voting member of the District of Columbia State Athletics Commission for a term to end November 16th, 2025. The State Athletics Commission was established as an independent agency in 2016. It oversees the function and operations of the District of Columbia State Athletics Association. It recommends changes to and annually approves the association's handbook. It establishes athletic appeals panels to hear appeals from local education agency decisions regarding participant eligibility and regarding decisions that the Athletic Association, I misread that. And it makes decisions, issues final decisions of such panels. It advises the mayor, the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, and the council on matters related to interscholastic athletics in the district, and recommends rules to regulate interscholastic athletics programs and competitions in the district. Commission consists of 9 voting members who are appointed by the mayor after confirmation by the council, and there are 6 ex officio non-voting members. Barbara Barnes is an 18-year district resident, including 14 years in Ward 4, where she currently resides. For 23 years, she has worked extensively in intercollegiate athletics, assisting schools such as Marquette University, the Catholic University of America, and Georgetown University. At Georgetown, she has moved up the ranks within the department and is currently the Associate Director of Athletics for Communications, overseeing a staff that performs external functions for all 30 varsity sports. She's being appointed as a voting member of the commission. The Committee of the Whole has heard no objections to her appointment. We had a roundtable on June 17th. This measure was introduced at the request of the mayor on May 7th. Without objection, I'm going to move both the print and report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. And the essence is that the committee, assuming this is approved, recommends council approval of PR 25-790. Is there discussion? The motion again is on both the committee, the report, and the print with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel? Is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report and hearing record are filed.
And Madam Budget Director, a fiscal impact statement is not required. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup is PR 25-817, Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority Board of Directors Judith N. Batty Confirmation Resolution of 2023. This resolution would confirm the mayor's nomination of Dr. Judith Batty for reappointment to the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority for a 6-year term that would expire October 4th, 2030. Ms. Batty is a resident of Ward 1. The Airports Authority was created in 1987 to assume control of Washington Dulles International Airport and Washington National Airport. The airports were formerly run by the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Federal Aviation Administration. The Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, or MWA, is an independent body created through an interstate compact between the Commonwealth of Virginia and the District of Columbia. In addition to the two airports, MWA also operates, maintains, and controls the Dulles Toll Road and the Dulles Access Road. The Airports Authority Board of Directors governs the activities of MWA. It's composed of 17 members, 7 appointed by the Governor of Virginia, 4 appointed by the Mayor of the District of Columbia, 3 appointed by the Governor of Maryland, and 3 appointed by the President of the United States with the advice and consent of the Senate. All of the terms are 6 years and members are not allowed to hold over, which is why this appointment is before us now, even though the term expires on October 4th. Ms. Batty has served as an executive and senior attorney at ExxonMobil Corporation for over 28 years. Prior to her work at Exxon, she was a corporate attorney in private practice, and before that, an attorney with the United States Department of Justice Antitrust Division. As I said, she has been serving, this is a reappointment, so she's been serving on the board. This resolution was introduced at the request of the mayor on May 22nd of this year. The committee of the whole held a roundtable on her nomination on June 17th. The committee has received no testimony or comments in opposition. Assuming this is approved, the committee would be recommending to the council adoption of PR 25-817. Without objection, I'm going to move both the print and report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there discussion? The vote is on both the print and report with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report and hearing record are filed.
Madam Budget Director, this is the nomination, therefore a fiscal impact statement is not required.
Correct.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on both, will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup is PR 25-839, entitled the Public Charter School Board Dwight Davis Confirmation Resolution of 2024. This purpose of this resolution is to confirm the mayor's nomination for appointment of Dwight Davis as a member of the Public Charter School Board, filling a vacant seat for the remainder of an unexpired term to end February 24th, 2027. The School Reform Act of 1995 gave the District of Columbia the authority to start independent autonomous public schools, commonly known as public charter schools. Currently, these schools are under the jurisdiction, so to speak, of the 7-member Public Charter School Board, which authorizes new charters, monitors the operation and student academic progress of the schools under its purview, and ensures that the public charter schools are in compliance with the terms of their charter and applicable federal and local laws. The Public Charter School Board, as I said, charters new schools through a comprehensive application review process. The Public Charter School Board currently oversees 69 local education agencies with 135 campuses. Dwight Davis is a native Washingtonian, product of the District of Columbia Schools, has served the children and families of the district as an educator, instructional coach, assistant principal, and principal. He was principal at Brown, and prior to his teaching career, he played both professional and semi-professional basketball with the United States and abroad. The Committee of the Whole, well, this measure was introduced at the request of the mayor on June 3rd of this year, and the Committee of the Whole held a roundtable on June 17th. The committee has received no testimony or comments in opposition to the nomination. With no objection, I'll move both the print and report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion? The motion is on both the print and report with leave for staff. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? I hear none. The motion is approved unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report and hearing record are filed.
Madam Budget Director, this is a nomination confirmation, so no fiscal impact statement is required.
Correct.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. If there's no objection, the next three resolutions will be moved in block. They are each confirmations of mayoral nominations to the Board of Industrial Trades. The Board of Industrial Trades was established to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the district by ensuring that individuals engaged in industrial trades have the specialized skills and training required to perform such duties for the public. The board governs asbestos workers, plumbers, electricians, refrigeration and air conditioning mechanics, steam and operating engineers, and those in the elevator trades. The board may establish bonding and insurance requirements, subcategories of licensure, education and experience requirements for licensure, and impose other requirements. The board is comprised of 15 tradespersons who are appointed by the mayor and are licensed in the district. There would be 3 plumbers, 2 electricians, 2 refrigeration and air conditioning mechanics, 2 steam engineers, 2 asbestos workers, 1 elevator mechanic, 1 elevator inspector, 1 elevator contractor, and 1 consumer member. PR 25-846, entitled the Board of Industrial Trades Levon Woods Confirmation Resolution of 2024, would confirm the mayor's nomination of Levon Woods for reappointment to the Board of Industrial Trades to serve a 3-year term to end on June 26, 2027. PR 25-847, entitled the Board of Industrial Trades Tanya Lewis Confirmation Resolution of 2024, would confirm the mayor's nomination of Ms. Tanya Lewis for reappointment to the Board of Industrial Trades to serve a 3-year term to end June 26, 2027. PR 25-848 would confirm the mayor's nomination of Mr. Sean Ellis for reappointment to the Board of Industrial Trades to serve a 3-year term to end on June 26, 2027. Give me just a moment. Each of these nominations was introduced at the request of the mayor on April 8th of this year. Because the committee didn't move within the required period of time. The resolutions were withdrawn and reintroduced on June 6th. The committee as a whole held a roundtable on May 23rd of 2024 on these nominations. The committee as the whole received no testimony or comments in opposition to any of these nominations. As I indicated before, I'm moving these three in block, both the prints and reports. Is there discussion? And the motion is with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Again, the vote is on the prints and reports for the three nominations with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, are these measures legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, they are.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
Once the reports and hearing records are filed.
Madam Budget Director, these are confirmations, and so a fiscal impact statement is not required.
Correct.
Without objection, these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure, in fact, the remaining measures are all bills. And the first is Bill 25-196, entitled the Ron Austin Memorial Park Designation Act of 2024. The purpose of this legislation would be to officially designate the park in Square 3376N as Ron Austin Memorial Park. This is located in Ward 4. It's an official park naming and typically involves the designation of official signage. In addition, the print includes a provision to clarify that the naming of ancillary interior spaces of District of Columbia Public Schools, such as auditoriums or libraries, need not be legislated. Assuming this is approved, the committee intends that such namings should be effectuated by the Chancellor of DC Public Schools and not under the Street and Alley Closing and Acquisition Procedures Act. Ron Austin was born and raised in the district. He attended Whittier Elementary and graduated from Coolidge Senior High. At age 14, he was elected as the youth chairman of the Neighborhood Planning Council, a precursor to advisory neighborhood commissions. After high school, Mr. Austin served his community as a coach at the Fort Stevens Recreation Center and worked for the Department of Recreation for over 24 years. He also served on the staff of several council members over the course of his career. And worked primarily on constituent services, a role for which he became known as Mr. Constituent Services. Under Mayor Fenty, Ron Austin served as the director of the Mayor's Office of Clean City. All the while, he also was serving as an advisory neighborhood commissioner representing the Manor Park neighborhood. The proposed park for designation is across the street from Mr. Austin's longtime home. And friends recollect him playing football in the park as a child. Designating this park as Ron Austin Park will serve as a reminder of Mr. Austin's dedication to the community and recreational opportunities in the community. Mr. Austin passed away in 2018. The bill was introduced by Councilmember Louis George on March 13th, 2023. The Committee of the Whole held a hearing on December 15th, 2023. And as I recall, the committee received no testimony or comments in opposition to the designation. Without objection, I'll move both the print and report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Bonds and then Councilmember Louis George.
I just want to thank my colleague for this resolution. And for those who, like myself, who knew Mr. Austin, this is the kind of representation in our community that we always want to have before us and to give them their just due in their community. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. Councilmember Lewis George.
Thank you, Councilman Bonds. Thank you, Chairman. As a Ward 4 council member, I'm proud to have introduced the Ron Austin Memorial Park Designation Act of 2024 and glad to see it before the council today. When we talk about being in community and being of service, we are talking about Mr. Austin, a son of DC, a graduate of Coolidge Senior High School. Mr. Austin started service early when he was elected to the Neighborhood Planning Council as a teenager. He served as ANC Commissioner in both ANC 4B06 and 4B07, and also served as the chair of ANC 4B. In addition to serving his community as an ANC Commissioner, and we know the hard work that goes into being an ANC, he served the district for 24 years as a staff member for council members and 2 different mayors. At the public hearing on this Designation Act, we heard Ron's friends and colleagues testify to his outstanding service to the district and his devotion to the community. The people we admire most in our city are often the people who stayed here and poured their time and resources back into their community where they grew up. Now, when families go to the park located in 4B06 off 2nd Street in Quackenbos, they will know that it's named after a man who loved the district and its people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion? The motion is on both the print and report with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
There is not.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup is Bill 25-611, entitled the Adjustment of Building Restriction Line in Square 2950 along the southern side of Fern Street Northwest, SO 23-06301, Act of 2024. The purpose of this bill would be to adjust, let me put it this way, the bill would adjust an existing building restriction line along the southern side of Fern Street. This is northwest. I won't list the lots in square 2950 to adjust it from 15 feet to 9.5 feet. The adjustment of the existing building restriction line is desirable to facilitate the development of 141 townhomes on the lots fronting Fern Street. I should say that this is on the former Walter Reed campus. The adjustment is made necessary because it was not known that there existed a building restriction line along this street segment until after many of the project approvals had been obtained. And the confusion occurred because the street had been eliminated from the highway plan in 1911. This would be the segment of Fern Street on the highway plan on the Walter Reed campus had been eliminated from the highway plan in 1911. And then in 1973, the entire Walter Reed campus was made into a single parcel. All of this created confusion, which is why the permitting process got most of the way through, and then it was realized that there was this building restriction line. The effect of this legislation is to change the building, to maintain a building restriction line, but to reduce it from, as I said, 15 feet to 9.5 feet. And this will allow the project of building these townhomes to continue. And that's why this will also be presented as an emergency bill at the end of this meeting. The bill was introduced by Councilmember Lewis George on November 30th of 2023. The Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on the bill on May 23rd, 2024. Committee received no testimony or comments in opposition. That includes as well testimony from the executive. The Department of Transportation did request a couple of conditions which are rejected by the committee print or by the committee, assuming that this is approved. But otherwise, there was no testimony or comments in opposition to this legislation. I move the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Is there discussion? By voice vote on the print with leave for staff, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I move the report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion? On the report with leave for staff, all those in favor say aye. Aye. That was anemic. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal
There
impact?
is not.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup is Bill 25-614, entitled Closing of a Public Alley in Square 5051, SO 21-00136, Act of 2024. This bill would order the closing of a 20-foot wide public alley and a small triangle-shaped right-of-way in Square 5051, which is bounded by Dick Street, Clay Place, Minnesota Avenue, and Minnesota Avenue in Ward 7. It's about a block south of Benning Road. The alley to be closed runs between Dick Street and another public alley to the rear of lots 28 and 29. These lots are controlled by the applicant. The applicant for the alley closing. The closing of the public alley will facilitate consolidation of the applicant's properties, that is lots 28 and 29 in Square 5051, consolidating them into a single record lot, which will allow the property owner to initiate the development of an office building with ground floor retail uses. The office building is part of a larger development project known as the Northeast Heights Town Center, which includes the headquarters for the Department of General Services, which opened on the west side of Minnesota Avenue in June 2023. Also includes a new full-service grocery store, which I believe is replacing the existing Safeway, and approximately 1,250 residential units and approximately 130,000 square feet of retailer service uses. The legislation was introduced by Councilmember Gray on December 4th of 2023. The Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on March 20th, 2024. The ANC did not testify, but they did adopt a resolution that supports the development overall. There was no testimony or comments received in opposition. I move the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Is there discussion? The vote will be on the print with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I move the report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there discussion? On the report with leave for staff, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam Secretary, excuse me, Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal
There
impact?
is not.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for consideration is Bill 25-636 entitled Closing of a Public Alley in Square 3701, SO 23-06220, Act of 2024. This bill would order the closing of a 10-foot wide unimproved public alley in Square 3701, abutting lots 85 and 88. In Ward 1, the lots are adjacent to Riggs Road, First Street, and First Street Northeast. I'm trying to see if I can help situate this. First Street runs from Riggs Road down to the Fort Totten Metro stop, and these lots, if you're going south, would be on the right. And this is an unimproved alley. The closing of the alley will facilitate the consolidation of these two lots into a single record lot and allow for the development of an approximately 104 unit affordable housing project with underground parking for approximately 70 vehicles. The project is a partnership between two development companies, small development companies, and Impact DMV Church, the latter of which owns one of the lots abutting the alley. The committee is unaware of any objections to the proposed alley closing except from the DDOT. And the committee did not agree with the DDOT's objections. Although the committee report does state that the committee would like to see, looking for the language, the committee hopes that the final project design minimizes any conflicts with the Metropolitan Branch Trail. So that statement is in the committee report. As I said, there were no other objections. Assuming this is approved, the committee finds that the 10-foot wide unimproved public alley in the square is not necessary for transportation purposes. The closing of the alley will facilitate the development of an approximately 104 unit affordable housing project. The approval of this bill should not be construed as approving the concept drawings, including site access that's in the record for the bill. This legislation was introduced by Councilmember Parker on December 20th, 2023. The committee of the whole held a public hearing on March 20th, 2024. And other than the objections from the Department of Transportation, which were, well, they call them objections, but they're actually conditions. There was no opposition with regard to this legislation. I move the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Parker?
Yeah, I wanted to elaborate a bit. This alley in Ward 5 is bounded by Riggs Road northeast to the north, First Place northeast to the east, and Federal Parkland on the west. And as you mentioned, does not serve any transportation needs. Closure of this public alleyway will allow for the owner to consolidate the property, which is bisected by the alley, into a single lot to make way for the development of approximately 104 units of transit adjacent affordable housing. As you noted, my office has not heard any negative feedback from the community about this closure, and I support moving it forward today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further discussion? The vote will be on the print with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I move the report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there discussion? Again, the vote will be on the report with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed,
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
And there's no
No
fiscal-
cost.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The last measure for markup in the committee of the whole is Bill 25-640 entitled the Ballpark Budget and Maintenance Amendment Act of 2024. The agenda says 2023, the print circulated says 2023. It will be corrected to say 2024. The purpose of this bill is to amend the Ballpark Omnibus Financing and Revenue Act of 2004 to clarify the use of the Ballpark Revenue Fund and to establish the Ballpark Maintenance Fund and to make conforming amendments. The Ballpark Revenue Fund, I'm going to get confused very quickly because there are two funds here, similar names. The Ballpark Revenue Fund, that's the existing fund, is a non-lapsing special purpose fund. It was established to pay the costs of construction and maintenance of a stadium, that is the National Stadium. The fund is essentially a dedicated source that the district uses to pay off the bonds used to fund the construction of the Nationals Park, which the district owns. The report details the 7 sources of revenue for the Ballpark Revenue Fund. Bill 25-640 makes changes to the existing law to create a stable, reliable, and consistent source of funding for ongoing maintenance efforts for the Nationals Park. The bill establishes a new Ballpark Maintenance Fund, provides that any Ballpark Revenue Fund balance remaining after the bond defeasance is to be transferred into this new fund. The new Ballpark Maintenance Fund is funded through the following revenue sources: ballpark sales taxes, rent paid from the lease of the ballpark, and any remaining balance from the existing Ballpark Revenue Fund. It's estimated that the revenue sources will total about $25 million a year, which will increase somewhat over time. The legislation also requires that Events DC submit an annual report to the mayor and council that details expenditures from the prior fiscal year and planned spending for the current and next 4 fiscal years. Beginning October 1st, I guess that means of this fiscal year, and annually thereafter until the ballpark revenue bonds are defeased, which we expect will be around 2027. The ballpark, let me see, the Ballpark Maintenance Fund, that's the existing fund, will be available for the stadium only for ballpark maintenance. I don't think I read that correctly. Events DC will be paying for maintenance until the bonds are defeased, and then the new fund will take over with regard to maintenance. There's also a prohibition on using the Ballpark Revenue Fund to finance additional bonds. The intent is to limit the fund's purpose exclusively to the Nationals ballpark. The intent of this legislation is to provide sufficient and consistent funding to ensure that the Nationals Park remains a first-class major league ballpark. Importantly, the bill supports the ballpark on revenues generated by the site itself. No additional borrowing is necessary. No taxes will need to be raised from sources other than the stadium. The report is going to be revised a little bit to add a general statement that the Nationals Baseball Club has had a positive effect on the southeast neighborhood that it's in. The bill was introduced about 10 days after Monumental Sports announced that it was leaving because its facility was outdated, which emphasized the need to ensure that the stadium that we own, the Nationals Ballpark, needs to be well maintained. Recognize the value of supporting existing teams in the district. This bill shows the council's commitment to our teams. It assures a modern, well-maintained facility, recognizing our partnership, and should lead to the extension of the lease, which we hope will be a 15-year extension. This legislation was introduced on December 22nd, 2023. The Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on March 12th, 2024. The committee has not received any statements in opposition, testimony, or statements in opposition to this legislation. I move the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Is there discussion? On the print with leave for staff, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I move the report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there discussion? With the report, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
The report and hearing record are filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
There is not a negative fiscal impact, correct?
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. We'll turn now to measures from other committees. Looks like most of the first page is taken up by the Committee on Health. There is no objection. We'll ask the Chair of the Committee on Health, Councilmember Henderson, to present PR 25-635 Food Policy Council Maya Price Confirmation Resolution of 2024. PR 25-647 Food Policy Council Beverly Wheeler Confirmation Resolution of 2024. PR 25-769 Food Policy Council Carrie Vaughn Confirmation Resolution of 2024. PR 25-771 Food Policy Council Nicholas Stavely Confirmation Resolution of 2024. PR 25-772 Food Policy Council Jason Kellogg Confirmation Resolution of 2024. PR 25-773 Food Policy Council Angela Chester Johnson Confirmation Resolution of 2024. PR 25-774 Food Policy Council Dalila Bachlan Confirmation Resolution of 2024. And PR 25-813 Food Policy Council James Huang Confirmation Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PR 25-635 nominates Dr. Maya Price to the Food Policy Council for a term to end March 1st, 2026. Ms. Price is currently the Director of the Food Security Equity Impact Fund at Feeding America. In this role, she invests in Feeding America's national network of food banks and community partners to address food insecurity. Dr. Price has also served as a Child Hunger Corps member and a AmeriCorps Vista member in Lexington, Kentucky, where she's worked on community-based food programs such as the Good Neighbor Store and the Mobile Pantry. Dr. Price earned her PhD in Urban Leadership and Entrepreneurship from the University of the District of Columbia, and she is a Ward 3 resident. PR 25-647 renominates Dr. Beverly Wheeler for reappointment to the Food Policy Council for a term to end March 1st, 2025. Dr. Wheeler joined the FPC in 2019 and during her time has served as the co-chair of the Food Access and Equity Working Group. Dr. Wheeler is currently the Chief Knowledge Officer at DC Central Kitchen, where she is responsible for the internal program evaluation and learning. Previously, she served as the executive director of DC Hunger Solutions and has had a long career in public service to the district. She received her doctorate in education and administration planning and social policy from Harvard University, and she is a Ward 1 resident. PR 25-769 nominates Carrie Vaughn to the Food Policy Council for a term to end March 1st, 2027. Ms. Vaughn currently is the farm director at Building Bridges Across the River, where she directs farming and gardening program at the ARC in Ward 8. Ms. Vaughn previously worked as the vegetable production manager at the Chesapeake Bays Foundation's 285-acre Keglet Farm in Maryland. She also served as a mentor for the Future Harvest CASA program, Beginners Farmers Training Program. Ms. Vaughn earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in biology from Pomona College, and she is a Ward 3 resident. PR 25-771 nominates Nicholas Stavely to the Food Policy Council for a term to end March 1st, 2025. Mr. Stavely is currently the Director of Incentive Programs at Fresh Farm, where he provides strategic direction and leadership for local and regional healthy food incentive programs. He implements all aspects of Fresh Farm's food access programs, including Produce Plus, and the USDA's funded healthy food access programs. Mr. Stabley holds a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Resource Economics from the University of Maryland, College Park, and he is a Ward 1 resident. PR 25-772 nominates Jason Kellogg to the Food Policy Council for a term to end March 1st, 2026. Mr. Kellogg is currently the interim director and chef instructor at the Culinary Arts Academy at the Carlos Rosario International School, where he leads a team delivering high-quality culinary instruction, career training, and support services to a diverse adult student body. He holds a Master's of Professional Studies from Food Business from the Culinary Institute of America and is working towards his Juris Doctorate degree from Catholic University with an expected graduation of May 2025. He is a Ward 5 resident. I'm just going to keep going, Mr. Chairman. I have 3 more. PR 25-773 nominates Angela Chester Johnson to the Food Policy Council for a term to end March 1st, 2026. Ms. Chester Johnson is the owner of Plum Good LLC, a minority woman-owned certified business enterprise based in the district, where she produces and sells local and international spices, herbs, teas, sauces, and gourmet snacks. She is also the founder of Grow International, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting women and youth farmers in Africa and U.S. cities. She earned her Master's of Public Administration from California State University and is a Ward 8 resident. PR 25-774 nominates Dalila Backlund for reappointment to the Food Policy Council for a term to end March 1st, 2027. Ms. Backlund joined the FPC in 2020 and during her time has served as the co-chair of the Sustainable Supply Chain Working Group. She's currently the food systems consultant, where she provides advisory and strategic services to a diverse group of clients across the United States on topics related to food systems development, resiliency, and financing. She earned her Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology from the University of Pennsylvania and is a Ward 5 resident. And finally, PR 25-813 nominates Dr. James Hong for reappointment to the Food Policy Council for a term to end March 1st, 2027. Dr. Hong joined the FPC in 2019, excuse me, and has served as the co-chair of the Nutrition and Health Working Group. He's currently the director of student health services at Gallaudet University. Previously, he started and directed the Comprehensive Medical Care for Deaf Adults and Children Clinic at Unity Healthcare. He earned his medical degree from the University of Vermont. Excuse me. And is a Ward 5 resident. At the hearing, I had a wide-ranging discussion with the nominees about expanding healthy food options in low food access areas, addressing challenges for urban farmers, and strategies to help support adults and children in healthy eating habits. I enjoyed learning more about these nominees, diverse and rich experiences and expertise across the district's food systems, and I believe they will all be strong members to the Food Policy Council. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, I ask that these nominations be approved and all placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, are these measures legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, they are.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
Yes.
Madam Budget Director, because these are confirmation resolutions, no fiscal impact.
Correct.
Without objection, these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure was reported out of the Committee on Public Works and Operations, chaired by Councilmember Brianna Doe, PR 25-696. Director of the Office of Veterans Affairs, Charlotte K. Woodard, confirmation resolution of 2024. Councilmember Doe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of PR 25-696 is to confirm the appointment of Acting Director Charlotte K. Woodard as Director of the Office of Veterans Affairs. PR 25-696 was introduced on March 26, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor and referred to the Committee on Public Works and Operations for consideration on April 2nd, 2024. Under the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, the Office of Veterans Affairs provides outreach, advocacy, and assistance to DC's 30,000 veterans and their families. Through its district's veteran service officers, the office assists veterans and their families with federal VA claims and benefits. The office also develops commemorative events that recognize the military service and sacrifice of district veterans. After an extended period of time without a permanent director, I'm pleased that the position in the Office of Veterans Affairs will be filled. Ms. Woodard was appointed Acting Director of the Office of Veterans Affairs by Mayor Muriel Bowser on March 11th, 2024. She brings to MOVA over 25 years of military experience specializing in human resources management, strategic planning, and operations management. She's served as Assistant Director of the Reserve Compensation at the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense, Manpower and Reserve Affairs, Military Personnel Policy, Military Compensation Policy, and Ms. Woodard commanded the Devens Reserve Force Training Area in Devens, Massachusetts from 2015 to 2017, where she represented the Army and installation in the local community. Previously, she was assigned to the Pentagon as the Personnel Office Branch Chief within the Headquarters Department of the Army, Military Personnel Directorate, where she made critical recommendations to the Director on regulations, policy, and legislation affecting Army personnel. Ms. Woodard is highly qualified for this position. Given the critical work of the office, it's essential for the Director to establish clear goals and outline a plan for improvement. As such, the committee has requested that the nominee provide to the committee by August 9th, 2024, a report outlining their goals for the office for the remainder of FY 24 and 25. This report will ensure the establishment of a clear vision and measurable goals for the Office of Veterans Affairs. The committee believes that with a comprehensive plan in place, the nominee will lead the Office of Veterans Affairs successfully. With that, I ask the resolution be placed on the consent agenda for the legislative meeting to follow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, this is a confirmation, no fiscal impact statement?
Correct.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. If there's no objection, the next three resolutions, which are confirmations to the Clemency Board, will be presented in block. They are PR 25-749, Clemency Board, Dr. Amber Thornton, confirmation resolution of 2024. PR 25-750, Clemency Board, Mark Rollins, confirmation resolution of 2024. And PR 25-809, Clemency Board, Dominic Henry, confirmation resolution of 2024. These were each reported out of the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety, chaired by Councilmember Brooke Pinto. Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the opportunity to move these nominees in block to the Clemency Board. Clemency Board operates within the Executive Office of the Mayor to develop criteria and an application for clemency, review applications of individuals convicted of DC code offenses, and make recommendations to the President of the United States for clemency. The board consists of 9 members, 5 of whom are appointed by the mayor and subject to council approval. These 5 members must include a district resident community member, a member with background in returning citizens issues, a mental health professional, a member with background in victims' rights, and a member of the District of Columbia Bar in good standing with experience in criminal law. Based on their resumes, experiences, and written responses to detailed questions submitted by the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety, I'm confident that each of these nominees put forward today will be successful members of the Clemency Board and will help move the board forward. PR 25-749 would confirm Dr. Amber Thornton as a member of the Clemency Board, filling a seat required to be held by a mental health professional for a term to end February 10th, 2027. This resolution was introduced on May 2nd, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor. Dr. Thornton currently works as a clinical psychologist at HSC Pediatric Center at Children's National Medical Center. She previously served as an adjunct professor at Wilberforce University and Wright State University, as well as a staff psychologist at VeraCare University of Tennessee, Boys Town Behavioral Health Clinic in DC, and KIPP DC Public Charter Schools. Dr. Thornton has authored multiple scholarly publications and book chapters and given a multitude of regional and national presentations. Next, Bill 25-750 would confirm Mark Rollins as a member of the Clemency Board, filling a seat required to be held by a District of Columbia Bar member in good standing with criminal law experience for a term to end February 10th, 2027. The resolution was introduced on May 2nd, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor. Mr. Rollins currently works as a partner at Rollins and Chan Law Firm, where he has amassed over 1,000 criminal bench trials and 75 criminal jury trials in front of almost every judge in DC Superior Court. Mr. Rollins also serves as the treasurer and practice manual coordinator for DC Bar Criminal Law and Individual Rights Community, a board member at Capital Guardian Youth Challenge Academy, a mentor for Rigsby Law Camp, and a member of the Criminal Justice Act panel in DC Superior Court. I do want to note that I am aware Mr. Rollins has previously represented individuals in connection with the January 6th insurrection. I abhor the actions taken by those involved in the insidious attack on the Capitol in 2021. And we also know that we must uphold the right for all people and all criminal defendants to seek and access legal representation in the court of law, and those who need lawyers willing to represent those who have broken the law. I am confident Mr. Rollins' commitment to and vast experience in criminal defense in the face of challenging ethical dilemmas will enhance his contributions to the Clemency Board. I have one more, Mr. Chair. Finally, PR 25-809 would confirm Dominic Henry as a member of the Clemency Board, filling the seat required to be held by a person with a background in returning citizens issues for the remainder of an unexpired term to end February 10th, 2025. This resolution was introduced on May 16th, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor. Mr. Henry currently works with the United Parcel Services, where he chairs the Safety Committee. Prior to his current position, Mr. Henry served as a Federal Bureau of Prisons contractor and community liaison, and as a program coordinator and manager for the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens Affairs, electrician program for at-risk men in Ward 8. Mr. Henry also founded the Young Men Incorporated and the Leadership Training Academy, through which he helped over 1,200 incarcerated citizens graduate the program and assisted 180 formerly incarcerated citizens in finding employment upon release. With that, Mr. Chairman, I move the nominees in block.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, are each of these measures legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, each one is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Budget Director, these are confirmations and therefore no fiscal impact statement.
Correct.
Without objection, these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilmember Parker.
I would like to request that PR 25-750 be placed on the non-consent agenda.
You may have to remind me when we get to the meeting, but hopefully I won't forget. If there's no objection, we will take the 5 nominations to the Science Advisory Board together in block. That would be PR 25-836, Science Advisory Board Jerry D. Ropero Miller, confirmation resolution of 2024, PR 25-796, Science Advisory Board Claudine Carter Pereira, confirmation resolution of 2024, PR 25-797, Science Advisory Board Laura Sudkamp, confirmation resolution of 2024, PR 25-798, Science Advisory Board Nicole Rome, confirmation resolution of 2024, and PR 25-799, Science Advisory Board Roger Kahn, confirmation resolution of 2024. Hearing no objection, the 5 will be considered or presented by Councilmember Pinto on behalf of the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to move these 5 nominees to the Science Advisory Board in block. The council created the Science Advisory Board in 2011 to provide peer review to the Department of Forensic Sciences practices and to ensure that the department is following industry protocols and best practices and making use of new technologies. The board consists of 9 voting members appointed by the mayor, all of whom must be forensic scientists with some specific expertise in scientific research and some with methodology. The Department of Forensic Sciences is currently undergoing a critical period as it works to obtain reaccreditation for its remaining unaccredited divisions. An impartial, strong, and expert Science Advisory Board is a vital aspect of DFS's efforts to regain public trust and credibility. And I believe these 5 nominees to the SAB are fully prepared to aid in DFS's growth and develop a strong working relationship with DFS. PR 25-796 would confirm Ms. Claudine Carter Pineda as a forensic scientist member of the Science Advisory Board for a term to end April 18th, 2026. This resolution was introduced on May 9th, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor. Ms. Carter Pineda currently serves as the director of the Broward County Sheriff's Office Crime Lab in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She also serves as a technical assessor for the ANSI National Accreditation Board. Prior to being promoted to lab director in 2014, Ms. Carter Pineda served as a print examiner for 15 years. PR 25-797 would confirm Ms. Laura Sudkamp as a scientist member with experience in scientific research and methodology of the Science Advisory Board for a term to end April 18th, 2025. This resolution was introduced on May 9th, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor. Before retirement, Ms. Sudkamp served as director of the Kentucky State Police Forensic Laboratories. Prior to serving as director, Ms. Sudkamp worked as drug chemist and in various managerial and supervisory roles for the Kentucky State Police Forensic Laboratories. She's a former president of the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors. PR 25-798 would confirm Nicole Ream as a forensic scientist member of the Science Advisory Board for a term to end April 18th, 2026. This resolution was introduced on May 9th, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor. Ms. Ream currently serves as the administrator for the Division of Forensic Science at the Wisconsin Department of Justice. She also serves as a technical assessor for the ANSI National Accreditation Board and previously worked as a DNA analyst at the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory. PR 25-799 would confirm Dr. Roger Kahn as a scientist member with expertise in scientific research and methodology of the Science Advisory Board for a term to end April 18th, 2026. This resolution was introduced on May 9th, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor. Dr. Kahn is a former chief science officer in Harris County, Texas. He served as a crime laboratory director at the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences and as deputy superintendent of the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation. And last, PR 25-836 would confirm Dr. Jerry D. Rapero Miller as a forensic scientist member of the Science Advisory Board for a term to end April 18th, 2027. This resolution was introduced on May 30th, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor. Dr. Rapero Miller is a principal scientist in the justice practice area of RTI International. She's also a certified fellow in the American Board of Forensic Toxicology and has served as a laboratory inspector for the National Laboratory Certification Program. The Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety held a public roundtable regarding these nominees on June 27th, 2024, and all 5 nominees' confirmation resolutions were unanimously approved by the committee at a markup held on July 2nd, 2024. I ask that all 5 confirmation resolutions for these nominees to the Science Advisory Board be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Are there questions from council members? Councilmember Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I raised this in the breakfast, but I do want to give Councilmember Pinto an opportunity to answer my question on the record as well. I think all of these nominees live in jurisdictions not in the District of Columbia. And so I was wondering if Councilmember Pinto can speak to the specific requirements for the Scientific Advisory Board and the efforts or not of the executive to find qualified members that live in the surrounding jurisdictions or here in DC to be able to fill these seats.
Sure. Thank you so much, Councilmember Henderson. So I agree as a general matter. It is almost always the best case scenario for us to hire district residents for district jobs, whether they be at our agencies or in an advisory capacity. The Science Advisory Board was established in 2011, and there were a number of specific qualifications delineated for their members. Some of those are that SAB members must be forensic scientists. They cannot be employed by the district, and they cannot provide any forensic science services to the District of Columbia. So it is an unusual set of professionals that would have this specialty in forensic sciences, but not provide any forensic science services to the district or be employed by the district in any way. So that is partially why it is usual that these nominees be non-district residents. I will also add, given our state of our Department of Forensic Sciences, we want to have the best lab in the country. I think we're going to get there. We have steps in place to regain full accreditation. But as we work to be the best lab in the country, I think using the insights and intellect from other labs across the US that have performed exceptionally well will be a benefit to our lab. And I have the commitment of Dr. Diaz and the executive to work closely with this new science advisory board who will be advising them on continued improvements.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker.
It's a similar question. This came up earlier, but again, I want to bring it up so it's on the record. Councilmember Pinto, can you speak to the work that is underway or has been done to cultivate more homegrown interests in this board and or looking at amending the policy that might preclude so many people from serving on this important body? And maybe that's an unfair question for you, as I don't want you to have to speak for the executive. But is that something that the committee is entertaining or would entertain? Is maybe a more fair question for you.
Well, the latest piece of legislation that dealt with the Science Advisory Board was an oversight law that was passed but has not yet been funded. And one of the provisions of that law specifically articulates that the SAB members do not have to be district residents. I think that was probably because this very narrow Venn diagram of people who are experts and practitioners of forensic science, but are not actually performing that in any way in the District of Columbia. That's kind of a rare person. So I do think that there is only practical to look outside the district for that type of role. In terms of other efforts underway, I mean, these are very hard jobs to fill, whether at SAB or at DFS. The council put in money in this year's budget to help DFS develop an internship program to try to get more people in the door and expose district residents and young people to the types of jobs that may be available to them in this field that is not always evident. So we are trying to think outside the box to allure more people into this very important field. And we put in $19,000 in this budget to do that for the internship program. But always open-minded to other ways to explore more opportunities for district residents.
No, I really appreciate it. Appreciate that. And I just want to underscore that all of these individuals seem to come with high regard and very impressive backgrounds. But I continue to share the concern that we need to do more to ensure more district residents and or at least regional individuals can participate on this board. But thank you.
Understand. Thank you, Councilmember Parker.
Thank you. Any further questions with regard to this? Madam General Counsel, are these measures legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, they are.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
Yes.
Madam Budget Director, these are confirmations, therefore no fiscal impact statement required.
Correct.
Without objection, these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I hate to do this, but I would request that these 5 measures be put on the non-consent agenda.
Okay. The next measure for presentation is PR 25-795. Director of Homeland Security Emergency Management Agency, William Clint Osborne, confirmation resolution of 2024. Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PR 25-795 was confirmed Clint Osborne as, I should say William Clint Osborne, otherwise referred to as Clint, as the Director of the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency, or HCEMA. The resolution was introduced on May 8th of this year by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor. In March 2007, the district's emergency management agency, EMA, was renamed the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency, HCEMA. With this change, HCEMA assumed all state administrative agency functions and responsibilities for federal grants awarded to the district and the National Capital Region. HCMA is tasked with managing the district's emergency operations by preventing, responding to, and recovering from natural and man-made emergencies. In carrying out this mission, HCMA acts as the lead agency and works closely with other emergency response agencies, including the Metropolitan Police Department, the Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services, the Department of Health, the Office of Chief Medical Examiner, and the DC National Guard. Clint Osborne is a Ward 7 resident who currently serves as the acting director of HCMA. Since 2017, he has held several positions within HCMA, including Chief of Preparedness, Chief of Operations, and Deputy Director. In these roles, Mr. Osborne assessed HCMA's capabilities and capacity to respond to catastrophic disasters and multiple concurrent incidents, oversaw the district's incident management functions, and set the strategy for the district's comprehensive preparedness system. Prior to his time at HCMA, Mr. Osborne worked as a principal emergency management consultant where he designed and implemented multi-million-dollar homeland security programs for local and state governments, colleges and universities, and regional transit systems. The Committee on the Judiciary of Public Safety held a public roundtable regarding this nomination on June 17th, 2024, and this nomination resolution was unanimously approved by the committee at a markup held on July 2nd, 2024. I ask that this measure be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, there's no fiscal impact statement required.
Correct.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure is Bill 25-247, Female Genital Mutilation Prohibition Act of 2024, reported out of the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill 25-247, the Female Genital Mutilation Prohibition Act of 2024, would explicitly prohibit the practice of female genital mutilation and cutting, otherwise referred to as FGM, in the district. It would prohibit a parent or guardian from recovering a person under their care from the district for the purpose of facilitating FGM, require the Department of Health to develop and make available to the public informational materials on mandated reporters' obligation to report that a person under the age of 18 is in imminent danger of being subjected to female genital mutilation, and establishes a civil cause of action for survivors and victims of FGM. Female genital mutilation is a harmful practice that involves the partial or total removal of external female genitalia or other injury to female genital organs with no valid medical purpose. Shockingly, the District of Columbia has not explicitly prohibited this action. This bill should not be construed in any way to limit the rights to bodily autonomy when it comes to gender reassignment surgery, nor is it intended to punish doctors or licensed medical professionals from conducting lawful medical procedures on consenting individuals. The CDC has estimated that there are over 3,800 women and girls at risk of FGM in the district alone. 3,800 women and girls just in DC, and 50,000 people impacted by or at risk of the practice in the metropolitan area. This number is shockingly and disturbingly high. As the nation's capital, we must be proactive with our laws regarding the safety and security of women and girls living in our city. Currently, only 9 states in the District of Columbia lack anti-FGM legislation. Passing meaningful anti-FGM legislation is essential to ending FGM in the United States, and I'm proud that the district will soon join the majority of the nation in enacting an explicit ban on female genital mutilation and cutting practices for any person, regardless of their age. I ask that this measure be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal
There is
impact?
no fiscal impact.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next Four measures were reported out of the Committee on Business and Economic Development, chaired by Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie. The first is PR 25-37, New Student Loan Borrower Bill of Rights Amendment Act 2024. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Chairman. Bill 25-37, the new Student Loan Borrower Bill of Rights Amendment Act of 2024 was introduced on January 13th, 2023 by Councilmember Henderson alongside myself and council members Allen, Pinto, Robert White, Fruman, Lewis George, and Nadeau. It was referred to the committee on January 17th, 2023. The Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety held a joint public hearing with the Committee on Business and Economic Development on Council Bill 24 on Bill 24-170, the new Student Loan Borrower Bill of Rights Amendment Act 2021 on October 25th, 2021. If enacted, this measure will prescribe affirmative duties and prohibited acts on the part of student loan servicers and private education lenders. And also clarify that student loan servicers under contract with the United States Department of Education shall be automatically issued a limited student loan servicing license upon meeting certain criteria. It also require the creation of a revised student loan borrower bill of rights by January 1st, 2025 by the Department of Insurance, Securities and Banking, as well as establish responsibilities of private education lenders regarding disability discharge and co-signer release, and authorize the DC Attorney General to bring an action for a violation of certain provisions, among other things. The committee print makes several changes from the introduced version after feedback from stakeholders during the hearing on the bill and then follow-up conversations. The most significant change is to remove the provision to transfer the student loan ombudsman from DISB to the Office of the Attorney General. Testimony provided by several of the public witnesses, as well as testimony of both government witnesses, recommended this transfer be removed. With that, I move that the bill be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie. Are there questions from members? Councilmember Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask some questions now because I don't want to take this off the consent agenda to Councilmember McDuffie. Councilmember McDuffie, there are a lot of federal student loan borrowers here in the district, but a lot of people get confused in terms of the communities within the district that are most significantly impacted by the burden of student loan debt. Can you speak to that a little bit in terms of how this impacts wards 5, 7, and 8?
Sure, I think it's a fantastic question. I think the burden of student debt falls disproportionately on Black and Brown communities, given the historic policy choices that have denied them opportunities to build wealth and secure high-paying jobs that would assist their ability to actually pay tuition. For example, in the district, the neighborhoods with the highest rates of severely delinquent student loan debt are neighborhoods like Congress Heights, Deanwood, Anacostia, Brentwood. By contrast, the areas with the lowest rates of severe delinquency are in the areas of K Street, Chevy Chase, Cleveland Park, Woodley Park, and DuPont Circle. So we know that these protections will benefit minorities, primarily Black and Brown communities, by enabling them to know their rights when it comes to repayment and providing them with an avenue to fight against the predatory practices, among other things.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie. And this bill is funded. We pre-funded this bill through the FY25 budget process, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. I appreciate you all, your committee moving on this legislation and look forward to its implementation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further questions? I have three questions. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Councilmember Henderson touched on this. We funded this through the budget.
Correct, we did.
Do you want to say anything more?
It was, I believe, 150,000 in 25 and over 500,000 across the plan.
Thank
At
you.
Bisbee.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next three measures would be on the agenda if we waive committee of the whole rule 403B, which has to do with the filing deadline. The rule allows for filing on, I believe it's the Thursday before the third business day. So it met that rule, but it wasn't filed on the fourth business day. If I have that correct. If there's no objection, I'll ask that Mr. McDuffie move to waive Council Committee of the Whole Rule 403B for all three bills in block. Hearing no objection,
So move.
discussion on the motion to waive the rule. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. So the next measure for our consideration is PR 25-804. American Association of Colleges and Universities Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2024. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Chairman. The aforementioned proposed resolution was introduced on May 13th, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor and referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on June 11th, 2024. The committee held a public hearing on this proposed resolution on June 20th of this year. This resolution authorizes the issuance, sale, and delivery of District of Columbia revenue bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $12 million to assist the American Association of Colleges and Universities. These bonds will be used by the association for the financing, refinancing, or reimbursing of costs incurred for its projects located at 816 and 18 R Street Northwest in Ward 2. With that, I move that the resolution be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, is a fiscal impact statement required on these revenue bond measures?
Yes, the council's budget office prepares them.
And
The funds are sufficient.
so the measures fiscal impact statement complies with council requirements?
Correct.
Thank you. Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. PR 25-805, Jubilee Housing, Inc., the Maycroft Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2024. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Chairman. The measure before us was introduced on May 13th, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor and referred to the committee on June 11th, 2024. The committee held a public hearing on the proposed resolution on June 20th of this year. This resolution authorizes the issuance, sale, and delivery of District of Columbia revenue bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $3,250,000 to assist Jubilee Housing, Inc. for its project located at 1474 Columbia Road Northwest in Ward 1. With that, I move that the resolution be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
There is not.
Thank you. Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. PR 25-850, Washington Latin Public Charter School Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution 2024. Before recognizing Councilmember McDuffie, I want to note the agenda says PR 25-806. It's PR 25-850. Mr. McDuffie.
Thank you, Chairman. This particular measure was introduced on June 6, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor and referred to the committee on June 11, 2024. The committee held a public hearing on this proposed resolution on June 20th, 2024. This resolution authorizes the issuance, sale, and delivery of District of Columbia revenue bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $55 million to assist Washington Latin Public Charter School. These bonds will be used by the school rather to refinance its 2021 revenue bonds and to finance the development of its second campus at 4301 Harewood Road Northeast. With that, I move that the resolution be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members? General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
And there's no fiscal impact?
No fiscal impact.
The objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. Sorry, but I think that completes all the business for this committee of the whole. We have a legislative meeting to follow, which will start at 2:50. The time is 2:42 PM and this meeting's adjourned. I'm calling to order this meeting. This is a legislative meeting of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Council. Today is Tuesday, July 9th, 2024. The time is 2:54 PM. We are meeting in room 500 at the John A. Wilson Building, the council chambers. This is the 28th legislative meeting of council period 25, and it is an additional meeting, meaning it's not a regularly scheduled meeting. We always begin our legislative meetings with a moment of silence, a moment to reflect. I would ask that everyone in the chamber on the dais observe a moment of silence. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Allen.
Here.
Councilmember Bonds.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George.
Here.
Councilmember McDuffie.
Here.
Chairman Mendelson.
Present.
Councilmember Nadeau.
Here.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
Councilmember Pinto.
Present.
Councilmember Robert White.
Present.
Councilmember Trayon White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The first item of business is we have the Secretary's report of committee filings. I'm going to recognize the Chair Pro Tem, Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to move to waive the reading of the Secretary's report.
There's been a motion to waive the reading of the report. Is there discussion? On the motion to waive the reading, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next item of business is the Secretary's report of introductions and referrals. Again, I'm going to recognize the Chair Pro Tem, Councilmember McDuffie.
I move to waive the reading of the Secretary's report of introductions and referrals.
There's been a motion to waive the reading. Is there discussion? On the motion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the consent agenda before us, and before I recognize Councilmember Parker, if we go to page 4, these are resolutions. Items 17, 19, 21, 22, 23, and 24 are removed from the consent agenda. Again, that's item 17, Clemency Board, Mark Rollins. Item 19, Science Advisory Board, Jerry Rapero Miller. Item 21, Science Advisory Board, Claudine Carter Pereira. To item 22, Science Advisory Board, Laura Sudcamp. 23, Science Advisory Board, Nicole Rome. And 24, Science Advisory Board, Roger Kahn. Are there any other changes to the consent agenda?
Yes, Chairman.
Councilmember Henderson,
Oh, that keeps happening.
did I get the, I was so pleased that I identified the voice correctly.
That's so interesting. That's not the first time it's happened. That's so interesting. We'll have to see if we can play some fun tricks with that. Okay, page 8, under emergency contracts at the request of the mayor. G9, multi-year contract number CW 98192 with BFI Transfer Systems of Virginia LLC, DBA Northern Virginia MRF Emergency Approval Resolution of 2024, also known as PR 25-890, and the accompanying declaration resolution.
All right, that's removed as well. Anything else? Hearing no other changes to the consent agenda, all members being present, I think we can do a voice vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Turning to page 4. PR 25-750 Clemency Board, Mark Rollins, Confirmation Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Pinto.
So moved.
Is there discussion? All those in favor of PR 25-750 say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, can you record me as present?
Could you speak up more quickly next time?
Sure.
Thank you. The ayes have it unanimously with the Councilmember Parker being noted as present. PR 25-836, Science Advisory Board, Jerry D. Ropero Miller, Confirmation Resolution 2024, Councilmember Pinto.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, please record me as present.
The ayes have it unanimously. Councilmember Parker will be marked as present. PR 25-796, Science Advisory Board, Claudine Carter Pereira, Confirmation Resolution 2024. Councilmember Pinto.
So moved.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, please record me as present.
The ayes have it unanimously. Councilmember Parker will be recorded as present. There's no objection. We'll do the next three in block. PR 25-797, PR 25-798, PR 25-799, Science Advisory Board, Laura Sudcamp, Science Advisory Board, Nicole Rome, and Science Advisory Board, Roger Kahn. Confirmation resolutions. Councilmember Pinto.
I move these three nominees in block, Mr. Chairman. So moved.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, please record me as present.
The ayes have it unanimously. Councilmember Parker will be noted as present. Turning to page 8. Number 9 at the top of the page, PR 25-890, multi-year contract number CW 98192 with BFI Transfer Systems of Virginia LLC doing business as Northern Virginia MRF doing business as Northern Virginia MRF Emergency Declaration Resolution 2024. Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you. I am withdrawing this contract at the request of the mayor.
Councilmember Nadeau, my understanding is the mayor's withdrawn the measure from the council.
Yes, the mayor has withdrawn the measure from the council.
All right, the matter's not before us. Turning to the non-consent agenda. The first measure for consideration is PR 25-933, Council Period 25 Rules, Recess Rules Amendment Resolution of 2024. This is fairly typical for us to have a recess rules resolution. It allows the executive to transmit an emergency version of the fiscal year 2025 Local Budget Act that was recently adopted by the council should emergency legislation be necessary if the permanent measure will not complete congressional review prior to October 1st, 2024, which is to say we will not know until later in the recess due to Congress's schedule whether it'll be necessary for us to adopt an emergency version because it's a budget. We are unable to introduce it ourselves. It has to be introduced by the mayor. So this would allow her to do that while the council's still in recess. Second, it allows the executive to transmit to the council during recess grant budget modifications to allow for the University of the District of Columbia to accept and spend any federal grants and to allow the executive to accept and spend any federal grants that come in as a result of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act or the Inflation Reduction Act. This rule is for the 2024 recess only. I was reading from the notice and I believe that correctly describes the resolution. So moved. Is there discussion? By a voice vote, all those in favor of the resolution say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is final reading on fiscal year 2024 revised local budget adjustment temporary act of 2024. So moved. There is an amendment from Councilmember Robert White. Councilmember White.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm moving this amendment to conform the FY 24 revised local budget temporary bill to emergency legislation I am moving later today regarding family rehousing stabilization program, typically known as rapid rehousing. The intent of this amendment and our later legislation is to require DHS to consider extensions of housing for residents in rapid rehousing beyond 12 months and to provide appropriate due process protections, but it will only do so if funding is available in the program to take these steps. My FRSP emergency was on the agenda 2 weeks ago, but before we got to a vote, the Budget Office identified that continuing the prior emergency and temporary bills would require conforming changes to the budget legislation. This amendment is the first part of those changes. Currently, DHS has published a notice in the Register that the money for rapid rehousing extensions was exhausted, and as a result, they are in the process of terminating housing assistance for families. While we funded a number of housing vouchers in the budget, among other substantial improvements to the mayor's budget proposal, it was not enough to meet the full need, so we know there will be families being evicted and displaced. This emergency would substantially continue the law that existed before we went into the budget process, but it will only have an effect if something changes regarding the availability of funding or in the rapid rehousing program. The mayor still has the power to reprogram funding or make other policy decisions to avoid further displacement, and this legislation would support that should she do so. So I ask for my colleagues' support on this as we continue to try to do whatever we can on our end to address the needs of our lowest income families. Thank you, Chairman. I move my amendment number 1 to B 25-788.
To Bill 25-788. Is there discussion on the amendment? By a voice vote, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the bill as amended before us. Is there discussion on the bill as amended? Bill 25-788. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We will turn now to reading and vote on emergency legislation. The first measure is PR 25-881, Family Rehousing Stabilization Program Protection Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chairman. On the same subject, now after we get through the declaration, I'll move an amendment in nature of the substitute based on feedback we got on the emergency bill from both our general counsel and budget offices. I spoke to this legislation a moment ago, and when I moved a conforming amendment, and so I'll be abundantly brief now. My ANS to this emergency would make conforming changes to the Budget Support Act and other budget legislation that would require DHS to consider extensions for residents in the rapid rehousing program past the 12 months and provide appropriate due process protections, but again, only if funding is available to do that. This legislation won't immediately resolve the problem of families in rapid rehousing losing their homes, but it does provide a path should funding become available within the program in the future to support extensions. That means the mayor can still change course and help avoid further displacement of families from housing. To support that path, I ask for my colleagues' support and move the declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember White. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? By a voice vote on PR 25-881, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Ensuring that everyone is present. The ayes have it unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-867. Councilmember White.
Chairman, I move my amendment in the nature of a substitute.
You move the bill and then move the amendment.
Sorry?
You move the bill and then move the amendment. We have the amendment before us.
So moved.
Discussion. On the amendment, nature of a substitute, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the bill as amended. Is there discussion? By voice vote, all those in favor of Bill 25-867 as amended, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it unanimously, and the left side of the council gets an award. I'm not sure what that award is, but they're a little bit louder. Moving to the left. The next measure is PR 25-921, District of Columbia Housing Authority Stabilization and Reform Emergency Declaration Resolution 2024. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chairman. In December 2022, the council and mayor collaborated on a temporary overhaul of the DC Housing Authority Board of Commissioners to make sure that the board would be as well equipped as possible to tackle some major problems DCHA and its residents were facing. We wanted to stack the board with proven leaders who could bring a variety of experiences and expertise and laser focus on moving the agency forward. We agreed at the time that the new Stabilization and Reform Board would serve for 2 years. There are still about 6 months left in the Stabilization and Reform Board's initial 2-year term, and we need a new round of emergency legislation today to keep the current board structure in place. It's also time for some focused thinking about what comes next for DCHA governance. Our 2022 emergency bill that set up the Stabilization and Reform Board instructed them to provide recommendations on a successor structure. We received their recommendations last week, and the Secretary's office has posted them to the Council's Legislative Information Management System for the public to review. The Stabilization and Reform Board has asked to stay in office in their current form for a total of 3 years instead of 2, which would take us through the end of 2025. I had a conversation with the board chair Skinner about this yesterday, and if members want to talk through the idea further with me, I'm happy to have those conversations during recess. For now, I move the District of Columbia Housing Authority Stabilization and Reform Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024 so that we can keep the Housing Authority running through recess. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? All those in favor of the declaration, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The underlying bill, Bill 25-892, Councilmember White.
So moved.
Discussion? On Bill 25-892, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. PR 25-922, Flexible Rent Subsidy Pilot Program Rules, Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm moving this emergency legislation after receiving a request from the Mayor's Office and the Department of Human Services. This legislation has the effect of accelerating approval of proposed rules for the district's Flexible Rent Subsidy Pilot Program, commonly called DC Flex, to before council recess. On April 23rd, 2024, Chairman Mendelson introduced PR 25-731, the Flexible Rent Subsidy Pilot Program Rules Approval Resolution of 2024, at the request of the mayor. The resolution would approve rules establishing requirements and procedures for DC Flex. Those rules, among other things, would continue existing emergency regulations that expand eligibility to include adult-only households without children and reduce the minimum age of applicants to the program from 21 to 18. Without council action, these rules would be deemed approved on September 16th, 2024. However, DHS has indicated that approval before council recess is necessary in order to appropriately implement the program, including with expanded eligibility. Emergency approval legislation is necessary to allow DHS to continue the program without any challenges. I move the Flexible Rent Subsidy Pilot Program Rules Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members or discussion? On the declaration, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. On the underlying bill, Bill 25, PR 25-923,
So moved.
and this is a resolution, not a bill. Is there discussion? On PR 25-923, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Next measure is medical cannabis clarification and non-resident patient access emergency declaration resolution of 2024. PR 25-929. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you.
We're on clarification and non-resident patient.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman, there's just an immediate need to issue temporary non-resident registration identification cards that are valid for periods between 3 days and no longer than 1 year in length, and to waive the application fee for testing laboratory licenses, among other things. In July 2023, the council enacted legislation to address these issues. The Medical Cannabis Clarification and Non-Resident Patient Access Temporary Amendment Act of 2023 expires on July 10th, 2024. Comprehensive permanent legislation addressing these issues has been introduced and marked up by the Committee on Business and Economic Development, but it must complete the legislative process. It is of vital importance that the provisions of the temporary act continue in effect until the permanent legislation has become law. With that, I move the declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie. Is there a discussion? I do want to note for the record that I've been receiving some communications that the medical cannabis businesses are struggling financially. And this is a continuation of our efforts to try to ensure that there is sufficient business for them. The problem is the competition from the illegal market, which Congress continues to restrict our ability to regulate. So of course, I'm supportive of this. If there's no further discussion, the vote is on PR 25-929. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The underlying measure, Bill 25-902, Councilmember McDuffie,
So moved.
discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-930. Medical Cannabis Patient Access Clarification Emergency Declaration Resolution 2024. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Chairman. There existed an immediate need to define the terms non-district resident and another jurisdiction, and to provide the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Board with the authority to issue patient and caregiver registration cards at no cost. In October 2023, the council enacted legislation to address these issues. The Medical Cannabis Patient Access Clarification Temporary Amendment Act of 2023 expires on September 4th, 2024. Comprehensive permanent legislation addressing these issues has been introduced and marked up by the Committee on Business and Economic Development, but it must complete the legislative process. Again, this is as well as of vital importance that the provisions of the temporary act continue in effect until the permanent legislation has become law. With that, I move the declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there discussion? The declaration is before us, PR 25-930. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The underlying measure is Bill 25-904. Councilmember McDuffie.
So move.
Discussion? By voice vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is African American Civil War Museum Limited Grant Making Authority Emergency Declaration Resolution 2024, PR 25-934. Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you, Chairman. These emergency measures will renew DEMPED's grant-making authority in fiscal years 24 and 25 to support the completion of the new African American Civil War Memorial. The new museum is a core component of the Grimke School redevelopment on the U Street corridor and will serve as an institutional anchor of the neighborhood. The museum is on track for completing its final build out in early fall, but is awaiting a final grant from the district to close a gap in resources due to increased construction costs. Council approved this grant making authority, which I introduced at the executive's request, but the temporary legislation expired before all details could be finalized. It's critical this final funding is in place so the district's commitment to the public project can finally be fulfilled. With that, I move the resolution.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there discussion? The vote will be on the declaration PR 25-934. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. On the underlying bill, Bill 25-908, Councilmember Nadeau,
So moved.
discussion. All those in favor of the bill say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-926, closing of a public alley in Square 3701, SO 23-06220, emergency declaration resolution of 2024. This legislation orders the closing of a 10-foot wide unimproved public alley in Square 3701, which these lots in the square abut Riggs Road Northeast and First Street Northeast. The purpose of the alley closing is to facilitate the consolidation of the lots into a single record lot, which will enable the owner to initiate the development of an approximately 104-unit affordable housing project with underground parking. The permanent version of this legislation went through first reading earlier in this meeting and committee of the whole markup earlier today. I move the declaration. Is there discussion? On the declaration, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The underlying is Bill 25-898. So moved. Is there discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? I was a little late. The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-925. Closing of a public alley in Square 5051, SO 21-00136, emergency declaration resolution of 2024. This legislation orders the closing of a 20-foot wide public alley in Square 5051 in Ward 7. The site is part of a larger development project now known as the Northeast Heights Town Center in the vicinity of Minnesota Avenue and Benning Road Northeast. The purpose of the alley closing is to facilitate the consolidation of two lots in Square 5051 into a single record lot, which will enable the developer to initiate the development of a 33,000 square foot office building with ground floor retail uses. Permanent version of this bill went through committee of the whole markup earlier today and first reading earlier in this meeting. I so move the declaration. Is there discussion? On the declaration, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You guys have it unanimously. The underlying bill is Bill 25-896. So moved. Is there discussion? On the bill, all those in favor say aye. Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-924. Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development Technology Incubator Grant Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024. This legislation authorizes the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development to issue a grant starting in fiscal year 2024 to Capital Factory for the purpose of supporting a technology incubator in the district. Capital Factory is a technology incubator that originated in Austin, Texas, which seeks to expand to Washington, D.C. Funding for a $500,000 grant to Capital Factory was included in the budget for the Deputy Mayor of Planning and Economic Development in fiscal year 2024. That would be in the Emergency Act, or the supplemental. And funding for an additional $1 million grant to Capital Factory was included in the budget for the deputy mayor for planning and economic development in the fiscal year 2025 Local Budget Act. However, a subtitle was not included in the fiscal year 2025 Budget Support Act or Emergency Act. And without this emergency measure that I'm moving, the deputy mayor would be unable to issue the grants timely, causing unnecessary delays. I move the declaration. Discussion. On the declaration, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The underlying bills, Bill 25-894, so moved. Is there discussion? On the bill, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-910. Buzzard Point Park and Trails National Park Service Grant Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2022, the council approved approximately $2.5 million in FY 23's budget for the District Department of Transportation to use for improvements to parks and trails on the National Park Service land in the Buzzard Point neighborhood located in the southwest quadrant of the district. Initially, DDOT and the National Park Service were not able to come to an agreement about how best to transfer the funds to the National Park Service. More recently, DDOT and NPS determined the best path forward to ensure the funding can be used for its intended purpose is for DDOT to grant the funds to NPS. However, DDOT's Establishment Act, the Department of Transportation Establishment Act of 2002, limits DDOT's grant-making authority to $1 million per grant, which prevents DDOT from granting the full amount of funding the council had approved for this purpose. In response, on October 3rd, 2023, the council passed the Buzzard Point Park and Trails National Park Service Grant Temporary Amendment Act of 2023. That temporary legislation created a limited exemption from the general $1 million maximum limit placed on DDOT's grant-making authority, allowing DDOT to grant the appropriated funds to NPS for parks and trails improvements in the Buzzard Point neighborhood. That temporary legislation is set to expire on August 1st, 2024. This new round of emergency and temporary legislation is necessary to prevent the gap in the law between the expiration of the temporary legislation and DDOT issuing the grant to NPS. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I move the declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? On the declaration, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The underlying bill is Bill 25-888. Councilmember
Still
Allen,
moved, Mr. Chair.
discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is bus lanes and zones fines rulemaking approval emergency declaration resolution of 2024. PR 25-912. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On November 21st, 2023, the council passed the Clear Lanes Bus Priority Enforcement Regulation Temporary Amendment Act of 2023. That temporary legislation amended Title 18, Chapter 26 of the District of Columbia Municipal Regulations, or the DCMR, to lower the fine for driving or parking in a bus lane. The temporary legislation is set to expire on September 18th, 2024. Back in February of this year, DDOT submitted a notice of proposed rulemaking that would make permanent and expand on the amendments to the DCMR adopted through our temporary legislation. And on April 23rd, 2024, Chairman Mendelson, at the request of the mayor, introduced the Bus Lanes and Zones Fines Rulemaking Approval Resolution of 2024, which would approve the proposed rulemaking submitted by DDOT. And that resolution is deemed approved on September 16th, 2024. Therefore, this emergency legislation is now necessary to prevent a gap in the law between the expiration of the temporary legislation and the passive approval of the approval resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I move the declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there discussion?
I have a question, Chairman.
Councilmember White.
Is this to simply keep it at $100?
This is to keep the lowered fine that we had passed. If we don't do this, then the fine would increase.
Is that amount $100?
I believe that is correct. We lowered it from 200 to 100. So we cut it in half.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? On the declaration, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the underlying resolution, PR 25-913. Councilmember Allen.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Discussion. All those in favor of PR 25-913, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Transportation Improvements Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024, PR 25-911. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 11th Street Bridge Park is a partnership between DDOT and the Building Bridges Across the River, a nonprofit organization located in Ward 8. The project will transform the old freeway into a new civic space over the Anacostia River. Planned programming for the completed park includes an environmental education center, a 250-seat outdoor amphitheater, a kayak and canoe launch, an urban farm, a community meeting space, public art installations, and an environmentally themed play area. The park is currently at 100% design and finalizing its final permits. DDOT plans to solicit the general contractor in September and begin construction by the end of this year, 2024. The 11th Street Bridge Park connects the eastern side of the Anacostia River on land that is currently managed by the National Park Service, or NPS. NPS is working with DDOT on a transfer of jurisdictional authority for this parcel, which is where the park's Environmental Education Center, amphitheater, and launch will be located. NPS is requiring that the parcel's official plat to be submitted to the surveyor's office specify the land will be used for transportation and recreation purposes. DDOT has concluded that under current law, the agency can only accept land designated for transportation and not recreation purposes. Bills 25-738, the Transportation Improvements Amendment Act of 2024, was introduced by Chair Mendelson at the request of the mayor on March 1st, 2024. The permanent bill would amend DDOT's Establishment Act to allow the agency to receive land that is designated for recreation purposes. The Committee on Transportation and the Environment intends to mark up the measure prior to recess. However, without legislative authorization to receive the land, DDOT is unable to move forward with the solicitation for the project, which may in turn cause delays that create additional costs to this project. Therefore, this emergency legislation is necessary to avoid additional project costs by allowing DDOT to receive the construction permit from NPS and begin soliciting for the project as the committee considers the permanent bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with that, I move the declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Is there discussion on the declaration, PR 25-911? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. On the underlying bill, Bill 25-890.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Allen, so moved. Discussion. On the bill, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-936, Pilot Truancy Reduction Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024. What is before us and was linked in the agenda is a little different than what was circulated last week with the notice. What is before us? Well, let me first say this. The purpose of these measures is to test the mayor's proposal to change truancy referrals in our schools. The goal of the referrals, current and proposed, is to help students. The purpose of the pilot is to test both the ability and the effectiveness of the Department of Human Services to handle truancy referrals. The emergency before us now and the temporary that will be before us shortly would amend the law to have the executive select 5 secondary schools. That could be middle, but it's probably high schools to refer to that had in the school year just passed a truancy rate of 50% or greater, to refer students ages 14 to 17 to the Department of Human Services if they accrue 15 unexcused absences within a school year. The emergency sets 3 requirements for the Department of Human Services. They must first notify the selected schools of the relevant procedures for referral. Second, produce a preliminary report by March 31st, 2025, and a final report by August 15th, 2025. The second was to produce a preliminary report, and third responsibility or requirement is to produce a final report by August 15th, 2025. The reports will measure for individual students, although the data will be aggregated on a this past school year and next school year, a comparison, as well as within next school year, a comparison of improvement, what we hope will be improvements for student in academic achievement, in attendance, and an improvement with regard to fewer juvenile justice referrals. I move the declaration. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilmember Freeman.
thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming forward with this legislation. I do think this is obviously a very important issue, and the question of where the referral should be is an important one. I think testing out how DHS can do in this role is important. The one thing that is out there, the executive has raised questions about some of the reporting requirements. I don't think that it's an objection to the legislation in principle, but a request that you work together between now and a second vote on the temporary legislation to see if there can be more common ground on those reporting requirements. I do note, and I think you have said, one of the things we want is a report in the budget season. And so there is a report in March of 2025. That's gonna be a challenge for that to be meaningful. I think you've recognized this. You'd first have to have students who accumulated 15 absences from the start of the year to then be referred, and then you'd be looking for what kinds of progress is made from the middle of the fall until the early winter with the holidays in between. I just think it's a challenge, and I hope that you and the executive can work together on reporting requirements so this can be as meaningful as possible. Thank you very much, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
let me say, and I said this earlier, that the March 31st report, yes, while it is a challenge, the idea is that we expect that the mayor will have in her proposed budget that we receive next March funding for these referrals to DHS. And so we want some data with regard to what's going on with this pilot. So while it might not be the best data, it's better than no data as we consider next year's budget. I'm of course willing to work with the executive, and the deputy mayor for education has been very collaborative on this bill. He and I have talked a couple of times and made changes to the legislation as a result of those conversations. The reporting requirement is simply to, let's see, describe the interventions and services, provide the 5 most common reasons for unexcused absences, present aggregate data on the 5 most common truancy intervention services or programs, and provide an analysis that compares the attendance outcomes, academic performance, and delinquency status of students referred to DHS, both current year with the previous year as well as within the current year, and current year means next school year, the school year starting in a couple months. It's not a lot of detail, but I'm happy to continue working with the executive if they have concerns. I think I mentioned this to you, council member, earlier as well, and that is that I spoke with both the deputy mayor for education and the director of DHS this morning, and neither of them raised a concern about the reporting requirements. But if they're telling you that they have concerns, yes, I'm open to talking to them about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion on the declaration?
Chairman.
Councilmember Robert White. And then
Thank
to my
you.
right.
Chairman, I do think it is important that we look at data. I see this not so much as a report. It's not a long report. It's simple data that will give us some metrics to understand how well this program that the mayor's designed aimed at addressing truancy is or is not working. I think we would agree as a legislative body, if the program shows signs of promise, we would want to continue it. If it doesn't, then we would want to question it. We have to remember that we have hundreds, maybe thousands of programs running across government, but for almost none of those programs do we have clear data indicating whether or not those programs are working. As we move into a more financially austere times, we have to make sure we're not just doing things and throwing taxpayer money at things, but really that we are solving problems. We only know if we're solving problems if we're looking at the data. So getting a starting point for where students are and where they have moved to at a certain point before we fund an expansion in the budget, I think is particularly important. And I think it's the type of approach we should be looking to take for more legislation that we put forth, whether the legislation originates from the council or the mayor. And I think that accountability is something we should be running toward and not from. So I appreciate your work on this. I'm happy to support it. And I hope that the idea of a simple sort of data indicating how we measure success is something that the administration will support. I know that I will support this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to first applaud your work on this emergency, which will allow DHS and the DME, or the Deputy Mayor for Education, to pilot a new referral system for the district and our schools struggling with absenteeism and truancy. I introduced legislation this spring that proposes this exact shift in direction, and I'm pleased to see that we are poised to pilot this new approach in the coming school year. I also support the reporting requirements that will allow the council to consider how the system is performing in a time for us to make informed decisions next budget cycle. I continue to believe that the rates of truancy and absenteeism in our public schools are unacceptable, and we have no choice but to make big changes in our approach. And lastly, I would just say I'm hopeful that this is the first of several steps that we're going to make. I know there was a hearing on several truancy-related bills just earlier this month, and we have to get our hands around this matter. This pilot will only focus on our high schools. That does not address the crisis brewing in our elementary and middle schools. And I look forward to working with you and our colleagues to continue to get this right. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you and your team for all of the work on this important issue and agree that student attendance and truancy are really at a crisis point in the district, with over half of our high school students not regularly attending school. And the reality is, and should be, very deeply troubling to all of us in government and in our communities. We know that absenteeism is linked to higher rates of poverty, diminished indicators of physical health, and increased involvement with the criminal justice system. Student absenteeism is also a public safety issue, and we need a truly nuanced and holistic approach to urgently address truancy and absenteeism to prevent short and long-term ramifications that we're seeing for our students. Accessing and obtaining a quality education is one of the fundamental needs of our society, and it sets the foundation for a healthy, safe, and thriving community. Our young people deserve a robust education and the opportunity to develop their passions, explore new ideas, and build a healthy and fulfilled life. But when students are not in their seats in the classroom, they are deprived of these opportunities. When our students are not showing up to school, we must tailor our interventions to the specific challenges facing each student, recognizing that those who miss school due to health reasons may need drastically different interventions from those who fear coming to school for safety reasons, or those who don't believe that their time is well suited in the classroom. That's why I'm glad to support this emergency legislation today and supporting a pilot program to refer students with unexcused absences at 5 high schools to DHS. The reasons that students don't show up for school are often connected to a child's or their family's social, financial, housing, health, or transportation needs, and DHS is particularly well equipped to connect students and their families with these wraparound support and resources that they need. Establishing this pilot program now will allow us to evaluate and improve DHS's capacity and efficacy in implementing truancy interventions. We have seen slight indicators of progress over the last school year. Continuing to address this issue over the long term will require intentional and persistent focus from the district government. And we know that our kids deserve and need all of us to live up to this responsibility to help ensure that they are safe and set up for success. I want to align myself with my colleagues who pointed out that this pilot is a great first step, but I continue to be worried about a more holistic need to keep moving forward on interventions that are working. And so I'll appreciate that we will look to see what's most effective here. The efforts and interventions and changing on how we are reaching out to kids and families and responding to their absenteeism cannot wait until next year. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Tran White.
Thank you, Chairman. As already echoed by my colleagues, I think that we are long overdue for some action items related to truancy in the district. We have historically had high truancy and absenteeism in the district even prior to the pandemic. I talked about this a little bit in the breakfast. We are in crisis. If students are not in school, we don't know where they are and what they are doing. And that's a high risk for those individuals who disengaged from school and in the community somewhere doing something. And so it is imperative that we figure out as a council and as a government how to engage students and get them more interested and create more creative and innovative ways to keep them in school and active in school where they're learning. According to a report released by OSSE, at one point we were at 42% chronic absenteeism in the district. Let me make sure I'm saying that right. 42%. And in one of the high schools, 90% of the students were deemed chronic absent in the building. That was a high school. And so this is a step. One of the things I am concerned about is about DHS having the capacity to spearhead and be a key, have a key role in this particular pilot program. I know it's a pilot, but I want to watch it closely. We have had issues with DHS as it relates to their technology, relates to follow-up with the agency and capacity. And so it's my concern that we do all that we can to empower youth and young adults to get in school and be active and get these numbers to be more reflective of where we want to go as a city, but also have those systems in place on the executive side and these agencies to foster and monitor and report that, and not just studying our students, but also interacting with their families, which is equally as important, and their living environments and the barriers that's keeping them from just going to school on time and arriving on time and completing their days in their in class and in their seats. And so I want to thank the members who worked on this and those other members who submitted bills over the course of the last year. But again, this is a first step to many to ensuring we have equity and inclusion and wraparound services, getting young people the education they need to have a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to add my voice to commending those who came up with this idea. And I think is so important as we are trying to deal with this crisis status of today with chronic absenteeism. I also want to ask of the young people who will have an opportunity to participate in this pilot and their families to consider yourselves lucky. You have an opportunity to really begin to adjust your life so that you can have a very bright future. In the modern world that we are confronting, you have to have something beyond what you accomplished in your high school curriculum, what you studied, in order to do that leap into the modern world. And so I'm hoping that you will find a way to embrace the treatment that comes through the pilot program so that you can make that transition effectively and affirmatively. We want all of our young people to find their place in our society and not just feel that they're left on the street to be and do whatever. And so whatever symptoms you may have that are discovered through the processes of this program, I'm hoping that we'll be able to gather that information. But more importantly, I know that we're going to be in a situation where there'll be a great need for resources to move our young people to another level. So that's my concern more than anything else. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. If there's no further discussion, we have the declaration before us. All those in favor of the declaration say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The underlying bill, Bill 25-912, so moved. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-935, Labor and Safety Omnibus Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you, Chairman. Today I'm moving this emergency amendment. It contains three sections and I'll try to address each of them. The first section addresses Initiative Measure 82, the District of Columbia TIC Credit Elimination Act of 2022. This act gradually eliminates the tip minimum wage through progressive increases until it eventually equals the district's minimum wage in 2027. Initiative 82 was originally intended to appear before voters on a primary election ballot in June 2022, but it did not appear until November 2022. The general election ballot. Because of this delay and the congressional review period, the law did not take effect until February 23, 2023. However, this effective date contracted the language of the act as approved by the electorate, which provided for the first increase in the tip minimum wage to begin on January 1, 2023. To avoid confusion about when the first increase to the tip wage actually occurred, the council enacted emergency and temporary legislation in January 23 to postpone the first increase until May 1, 2023. The council then approved a second emergency and temporary acts on February 6, 2024. The temporary expires on September 18th, 2024. And this requires us to take action before recess to make sure that the date of the first increase to the tip wage will not retroactively revert to January 1, 2023, because it will create further confusion among our stakeholders. Specifically, we want to make sure that district employees do not pursue wage theft claims under the impression that they were entitled to a higher wage rate under the original language of the Initiative 82, especially between January and May of 2023. The emergency and temporary legislation before us today will ensure continued in the law by maintaining May 1, 2023 as the effective date for the first increase to the tip minimum wage until this change can be permanently codified in before the end of the council period. I urge my colleagues to support this measure and to continue to support the district's tip wage employees and their employees during this transition period. This measure also includes an additional section at the request of the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety that addresses a short gap in the law. This bill amends the subject to appropriation provision. Thank you. Okay, secure. Thank you, sir. Regarding the district's pretrial procedure. The changes to pretrial procedures are already in effect through temporary legislation that expires in August. The permanent version of Secure DC Omnibus Amendment Act of 2024, effective June 8th, 2024, includes these same changes subject to appropriations and which have been funded in the supplemental budget, but the subject to appropriations language will not be changed until the BSA becomes effective on October 1, 2024. This section ensures that the existing law remains in place between the expiration of the temporary legislation in August and the effective date of the BSA in October. This emergency legislation will also make effective the additional changes to pretrial detention, included in the permanent version of Secure DC Omnibus Amendment Act of 2024, which were funded in the supplemental budget. And lastly, this measure amends the Comprehensive Merit Personnel Act of 1978, which amends DC Code Section 1617.08 to limit the items that are non-negotiable during collective bargaining negotiations. It clarifies that when the Public Employee Relations Board is called upon to determine the scope of bargaining pursuant to this section, management shall have the burden of demonstrating that the matter is expressively excluded from negotiations via subsection 8. This change is necessary because multiple collective bargaining units are in the process of renegotiating compensation agreements, and the delays that result from appeals made to the Public Employee Relations Board significantly hampered the negotiations process by making it ineffective. As you know, we have been behind schedule with many of our collective bargaining units, and we need to eliminate portions of the process that lead to the delay. And this bill will make clear exactly what items are or are not negotiable and should limit the number of appeals that are filed with the Public Employee Relations Board of PERB. The original version of this bill contained a clause that addressed the negotiability of the tour of duty of DC firefighters. However, the amendment to the amendment that was circulated at 6 p.m. yesterday is the corrected version because it strikes reference to the fire and emergency medical services. And so with that, I thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I tried to move the emergency declaration resolution.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? Councilmember. On the declaration 25-935, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yes, have it unanimously. On the underlying bill, Bill 25-910, Councilmember Bonds,
So moved.
and you have an amendment.
Yes.
And the amendment was circulated at 6:08 yesterday and is linked on the agenda under the temporary.
Correct.
Okay. And the amendment, do you want me to say what the amendment does? Your amendments.
I really spoke to the amendment in my remarks, but this is the amendment to the amendment really removes or strikes reference to the fire and emergency medical services. And so that's what it really does. Thank you.
As I'm looking at it, it amends section 4 by striking subsection B. Right, if there's no objection, the amendment will be accepted. Hearing no objection, it is accepted. And we have the bill as amended before us. Discussion on the bill as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is emergency legislation introduced at the request of the mayor. PR 25-907, sign regulations, emergency declaration resolution 2024. This legislation is being introduced at the request of the mayor and in consultation with the attorney general to extend already adopted emergency and temporary legislation. These measures would, among other things, ratify and adopt certain sign regulations previously issued by the Construction Codes Coordinating Board and the city administrator. The measures would also clarify the rulemaking process for sign regulations and clarify the prohibition on off-premises advertising that is in Appendix N of Title 12A of the DCMR. The notice that was circulated last week goes into more detail. I move the declaration. Is there discussion? On the declaration, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I move the underlying bill, Bill 25-883. I circulated an amendment which is linked on the agenda. The amendment speaks to the applicability section. Rather than saying the effective date of this act, it says November 2, 2022. That was the effective date of the original Emergency Act. that the council adopted to ratify all of the rules cited in section 2 of the bill. So I move the amendment. If there's no objection, the amendment will be accepted. Hearing no objection, it is accepted. We have the bill as amended before us. If there's no further discussion on the bill as amended, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-931. I don't know why we have to have such a long title. Corrected compensation and working conditions agreement between the District of Columbia Public Schools and the Washington Teachers Union, Local 6 of the American Federation of Teachers, Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you, Chairman. Today I'm moving this resolution because the version of the agreement transmitted to and approved by the council included a drafting error. The error involves section 36-36.10.2 of that version of the agreement, which states that the primary parties agree to discuss additional compensation options for the elementary grade level chairs. However, DC Public Schools and the Washington Teachers Union had already agreed at the time that DC Public Schools would provide a new stipend of $1,000 per year for elementary grade chairs starting in the school year 2022 through 2023. The updated stipend provision, however, was not included in the version of the agreement that was submitted to the council. Therefore, this amendment is a corrected version of the agreement. I strongly urge us to immediately approve the corrected version of the agreement. Today, it is important for our government to keep our promises and fulfill our end of the deal when it comes to these agreements. One of the points I did want to make clear that this, there was some controversy regarding what and when this money was to be paid to the teachers. And I do have information that indicates that a portion of the money has been paid, but not all of the money has been paid out. In other words, some of the teachers who fall in this category have received their stipend, and there remains, according to the CFO's office, there remains approximately $643,000 for this coming year. As we remember, the teachers union contract is in force. This is the old contract, but we do hope to get a new one. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move it.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. The declaration is before us. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Henderson.
I just want to ask Councilmember Bonds whether or not she got an estimate of when they believe the money will be dispersed.
I do not have an estimate, but what I do have from the Associate Chief Financial Officer is that they have requested a date when they will receive the payment request file so that the payroll team can begin the process.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I guess it's a two-step process for folks that they're gonna have to first get the file from DCPS, I'm assuming. And then once they have the file from DCPS, then the CFO will be able to do their work.
That is correct, but part of the file has been received for previous years. And so so they're now waiting to receive the updated file. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Bonds, couple questions. You and I had a hearing on the contract when it was first ratified by the union and presented to the council for approval, correct?
Yes.
And at that hearing, didn't we ask both parties, that is management as well as the union, whether the document that was given to us was complete, correct, and accurate?
We did.
Yes, and this legislation is to correct an omission from that document.
Correct.
Is there any further discussion on the declaration? All those in favor of the declaration say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the underlying resolution, PR 25-932, Councilmember Bonds.
So move.
Oh, you circulated an amendment today at 1:15. Applicability. This resolution shall apply as of.
Yes,
February
we did. We added the provision, the application clause that establishes February the 7th, 2023 as the effective date for the resolution.
As the applicability date for the
Yes.
resolution, not effective date. They're two different things. And it's retroactive to February 7th, 2023.
Correct.
And that was circulated at 1:15 PM today. So you're moving the amendment?
Yes, we are.
Point of clarity, Chairman.
Yes.
Is this the same one as the one circulated at 3:24 PM?
I think, yeah, it would be.
Alright.
Originally it went out at 1. You should have gotten it.
No.
No. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, the one he has is a different one, yeah.
I need some clarification. What was?
All right, the
circulated?
clarification is that this amendment establishing February 7th, 2023 as the effective date for the resolution was sent to my colleagues at 1:15 PM today.
Councilmember Tran White?
It looked like the FIS was what
Yeah,
sent out later. All right, just trying to get clarity on.
yeah, the FIS came out later.
Okay, so the amendment that's before us would add an applicability section. This resolution shall apply as of February 7th, 2023. If there's no objection, this amendment will be accepted. Hearing no objection, it is accepted. We have the resolution as amended before us. Further discussion? On the resolution as amended, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We are now at the first reading and vote on temporary legislation. I try to move all of these in block. Every other meeting, I get a little frustrated. It's a horrible thing. So before I list all of them in block, let me list this. Number one, the Family Rehousing Stabilization Program Protection Temporary Amendment Act includes the amendment in nature of a substitute that Councilmember Robert White moved to the emergency. Correct, Councilmember White? Correct, Madam General Counsel?
That's correct.
And on page 13, the Sign Regulations Temporary Amendment Act of 2024 includes the amendment that I moved to the emergency, which if I remember correctly, had to do with the applicability date. I'm saying correct to that, Councilmember, Madam General Counsel?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, correct.
Okay. And I am deleting from this two measures. I'm going to make sure with General Counsel I'm correct. Number 6 and 7, closing of a public alley in Square 3701 and closing of a public alley in Square 5051, because both went through first reading today and therefore temporary is not necessary.
That's correct.
Okay, so what I'm moving in block is number 1, Bill 25-868, Family Rehousing Stabilization Program Protection Temporary, with that amendment, nature of a substitute. Number 2, District of Columbia Housing Authority Stabilization and Reform Temporary Bill 25-893. Number 3, Bill 25-903, Medical Cannabis Clarification and Non-Resident Patient Access Temporary. Number 4, Bill 25-905, Medical Cannabis Patient Access Clarification Temporary. Number 5, Bill 25-909, African American Civil War Museum Limited Grant Making Authority Temporary. Number 8, Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development Technology Incubator Grant Temporary. That's Bill 25-895. Bill 25-889, Buzzard Point Park and Trails National Park Service Grant Temporary. That's number 9 on page 12. Number 10, Bill 25-891, Transportation Improvements Temporary Amendment Act of 2024. Number 11, Bill 25-913, Pilot Truancy Reduction Temporary. Number 12, Labor and Safety Omnibus Temporary Act. That's Bill 25-911, and that includes Councilmember Bond's amendment. I omitted that at the beginning of this list. And on page 13, number 1, Bill 25-884, Sign Regulations Temporary Amendment Act, which includes the amendment I moved to the emergency. Any clarification? Any objection from members moving all of this in block? The vote will be on these, I believe it's 11 temporary measures, first reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. That, I'm sorry to say, is going to conclude the business of this meeting. We had a good time, especially since we may be locked into the building for the next few minutes while the Secret Service does its thing. I'm saying that based on a conversation like 3 hours ago. I have no updated information unless the secretary does.
No, Mr. Chairman, nothing updated, so we'll just see what happens.
Well, there are 2 extra bagels, leftover bagels from breakfast, so if you. All right, I'm ignoring you, Councilmember White. The next legislative meeting is scheduled for September 17th, 2024 at noon. I would like to note for the public that while the council may be on recess from July 15th to September 15th, that means that there are no legislative or committee meetings or hearings, official hearings. But council members tend to be busy during that time. So a lot of work to be done to get ready for the fall. With that, the time is 4:11 p.m. and this meeting's